All right, good morning. Good morning, morning, morning. Welcome to our class. It has been, I don't know, three years since I taught. I was teaching when COVID hit, which was a little bit of an adventure to try and learn all those things when that came about. But if you'll recall, I like to run fairly interactive classes. And as a result, to try and figure out like the microphones and all those sorts of things, if you're sitting in the back, we'd love to have you temporarily join us in the front. If you're willing to make the trek, particularly difficult, we don't have microphones in the back. So if you would like to participate in the class, come join us in the front. Otherwise, nobody in Zoom and YouTube land will be able to hear you. For those that are on Zoom, you are welcome to chime in. We should be able to hear your comments. You should be able to participate just fine. But we've never tried it before, at least in terms of running so much back and forth and participating that way. So we'll make it work. All right? With that, let's get rolling. So last week, Gordon was walking us through Moses before the call. We got about halfway through the slides. So we're going to run kind of a crash course to finish out the last part of that piece, and we'll see how far we get into lesson 3. I'm not exactly sure how far we'll get. If you remember the outline, so what you're going to see today, you're going to see a couple things that are a little bit different. When we've got these nice purple charts, these are the charts that we're using almost directly from the source of the lessons. They don't walk through things the way that my brain likes to present them. So you'll see me switch back and forth between these things and straight black slides. And the black slides are places where I changed the order a little bit or wanted to ask more specific questions. So I apologize for switching the formatting back and forth, but I wanted to make sure that that worked out. All right.
You're forgiven.
Okay. I don't have to come up front at the end of the sermon. Okay, good.
Just kiss the ring.
Ooh, we're lively today. This is going to be fun.
My ring is at the jeweler's.
Okay. So you can see we've kind of got through our introduction, and we're a little bit into section 2 of the expanded outline. We're going to try and get through 2B and 2C today, or part of 2C. I don't think we quite get all the way through in the third lesson in the series. And then here's the remainder of the expanded outline. We'll get there, I don't know, before Christmas. So when we're working through, this is where Gordon left off, and so we're going to cover the second half of kind of this part really rather quick. So if you want to go ahead and open your Bibles up to Exodus chapter 2, that's where we're going to get started. We're going to cover chapter 2, chapter 3, and I think a chunk of chapter 4 today. So we'll be cruising through there, handy to have that open. A lot of the verses will be up in the screen, but that'll let you kind of move back and forth and see the pieces we skip. So we're going to read through a couple pieces. Realistically, I thought I put a slide in right here. Please tell me these are the right slides. Oh, that's going to be fun. But I didn't. So the quick version, right, is that between where we left off and here, Moses had killed the Egyptian and was banished. Out he goes, off to Midian, meets Jethro, gets married, and we kind of we're skipping all of that stuff. And into the end of towards the end of chapter 2. Now it came about in the course of those many days that the king of Egypt died, and the sons of Israel sighed because of the bondage, and they cried out, and their cry for help because of their bondage rose up to God. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw the sons of Israel, and God took notice of them. So this is our turn, right? We've got that the king of Egypt died, the people cried out, God heard their crying and took notice of them, and now he's going to take action, all right? And so that's That is all we're covering in Moses and the life in Midian. And now we're going to move into chapter 3 and look at the call of Moses, right? So I'm going to read it through a few verses here, and then we'll get to the more interactive portion of our adventure. So starting off, Exodus 3, now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, and his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. So much wonderful imagery. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He also said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face and was afraid to look at God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt and have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I am aware of their sufferings. So I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians and to bring them up from that land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, and to the place of the Canaanite and the Hittite and the Amorite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite. And now behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. In a lot of the classes that I've worked with in Exodus or heard or seen or worked with, we always tend to spend a lot of time on kind of the burning bush and the symbolism and the removing the sandals and all those kinds of things. So in this class, we're not going to do that. Sorry, you get my version of how this class is going to go. Instead, what I want to do is really kind of look at the interaction, the conversation here with the Lord and Moses, because there's a lot of moving parts in here. And I think when I went through the lesson this time around, something new hit me. And that's the wonderful thing, I think, about the Word of God, is that every time you open it, you get something new. And so this hit me different this time. So you're going where it hit me. So I want to start here then with what do you notice? What are the kinds of things you notice about God's request? Tell me about God's request. There were a couple things I noticed, but I'm curious what things stick out to you about the way or the manner in which God calls Moses here. So it's not a request, yeah? Uh-huh. It's not a request. He doesn't ask. There's no question mark. And I don't know, Gordon or Warner might know whether there's question marks in the original text or not, but it doesn't feel like a request at all. Yeah, there's no punctuation. What else? What else about the request? Anything else stick out? It is very specific. I will send you, right? I think about this a lot of times. So, sorry, I kind of get stuck into the work world every once in a while, right? Whenever I've got somebody trying to influence somebody, I always tell them to do the same thing, right? Tell them what the problem is, and then go tell them what the solution is. And we get that same thing here, right? God talks to Moses and tells him what the problem is, right? He's very clear. This isn't vague, right? I've got a problem, and here's my solution, right? This solution happens to involve Moses, but I think it's interesting that God isn't vague here, right? It's not, Moses, I need you. Good luck. Right? He's clearly identified, I want to solve something, and I'm going to send you, and you're going to help me do that. All right? So this sets up our context. And now to keep in the flow with the original class structure, Thank you. That was a great lesson. And on to our next lesson. All right. So that kind of caught us up a little bit. So I know I absolutely stormed through that. I'm hopeful that we get to the end of 3 today. I really like where they wind up ending the lesson set here. And so that's what we're going to do. All right.
You did a mark on us.
I did a
A mark, the Gospel of Mark, very quick.
Yeah, abbreviated. We cut to the point for sure. Yeah.
God heard his people cry out.
Yeah.
He didn't just leave them on their own. It was a long time they were there, but he heard them.
Yeah, God heard the people. He absolutely did. He heard them and is doing something about it. He didn't just leave them be. It took a while. You're right. All right, so absolutely. And I think when I think about Exodus and when I've looked at it in the past, I've often kind of come to the conclusion or really looked at it from the context of what God was trying to teach the Pharaoh or to teach us through the Pharaoh. I didn't come away with that impression this time at all. I came away with a very different impression. I'm curious to see. We'll get a little bit farther and we'll get a little bit farther in that. All right. I think it's much more this read through about teaching Moses. Yep, because he's trying to get Moses to the point where he can lead. And we will reflect on this a whole lot. All right, quick summary. Basket kills the guy, shepherd, burning bush. Off we go. All right, so kicking right back up where we left. We're going to pick up our reading in Exodus 3. I think this is like the next verse from where the last class would have left off. Therefore, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, right? So this is explaining more detail to Moses. I will send you to Pharaoh so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. All right, here we go. Did I put that in there again? I did. I duplicated. All right. Round 1, Moses versus God. All right. What in the world is Moses doing here? How's he feeling? He's intimidated, you think? He's got some excuses. He doesn't feel worthy.
He doesn't want to make a change.
Well, we'll see that. I think I think that's an overarching theme. He doesn't really want to make a change. Why do you think he feels this way?
John?
Yeah.
It appears to me that Moses says, God, this is a great idea, but you need to send somebody else. Because, I've got some issues with, the guy on the throne, so.
Right?
Yeah, and besides, my Egyptian clothes don't fit.
Yeah, I like your objective. I don't really like your plan all that much. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, we think about, it's easy to kind of skip and overlook his background, right? How much time has Moses spent with the Israelites? 0, right? These aren't his people. I mean, they are, right? But are they? I imagine that it must be hard for him to kind of make that connection back to, God calling him out, right? If you think about, from his perspective, right? Hey, I've been out here in the wilderness. I don't want nothing to do with those Egyptians. I'm not I was able to get away. I'm not a slave necessarily, right? I've managed to get away.
Yeah, if you think about it, the last time he was in Egypt, what did the Israelites say to him?
Yeah.
Who made you judge over us?
Yeah.
He goes back,
Yeah. So we're going to see a bunch of different things pop up here, right? The first one is, I'm a nobody, right? I think this is round one, right? Who is me? So, and we talked a little bit about how he's feeling here as kind of feeling a nobody. Can you think of situations that pop up today that we can relate to with Moses in this position in our relationship with God? Yeah, go ask somebody to teach a class. Absolutely. I can't teach that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Looking to get more people engaged and involved in what we do here. It's very, very difficult, right? Why? I don't know anything. How can I teach that class? How can I help? Okay, what else? I think it's, in kind of the super oversaturated, interconnected environment we all live in today, right? It feels like because we're connected to so many people, it's always somebody else's job, right? I am nothing in the sea of everything. And you're connected to so many everythings. Well, why can't somebody else in the sea of everything do it? I'm just a nothing.
You ask yourself, is Moses thinking, I need to stay away from burning bushes?
It's like, what have I gotten myself into? But at the same time, right, God picked something that Moses would definitely be interested in, right? He didn't pick something that Moses was like, not touching that with a 10-foot pole. He's like, no, burning bush, not burning up. That's interesting, right? It appealed to his interest. Had to.
It seems that this is the first time he has heard the voice of God.
Seems like it's the first time he's heard the voice of God. Interesting. I would imagine it probably would be. I mean, we don't have record either way, but he kind of reacts that way, right? All right. So what does God...
John?
Yeah? Hit it, Tony.
Moses forgot that he probably more than anyone else was the perfect person to go because he understood the Egyptians. He was raised as a prince of Egypt.
Yeah.
So he understands them better than most.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
And thinking, one thing that we're forgetting is that his mother nursed him probably until he was close to 5 years old, and must have had told him about his people, and those things that we learn when we're very young stay with us. So he would have known that he was an Israelite from a very young age. Right.
Interesting. I want to come back to that in a little bit because we're going to get to something maybe at the end of class if we're fast enough that I want to touch back on that again. Okay? So what does God do in response to Moses' concern, right? I mean, we may think it's a valid concern or an invalid concern. I think sometimes we sometimes we tend to kind of overlook the difficulties that folks have in these in their interactions with God, right? We'd be like, oh, well, certainly I wouldn't have. What is God's response?
He tells Moses that he's not going to go in alone, that he will be with him.
Yeah, he definitely responds to it. He's not ignoring the plea, right? He's not simply telling Moses, nope, shut up and color, right? Get the job done. He says, nope, it'll be all right, right? This is how you'll take care of it, right? He answers Moses's concerns, all right? All right, round two. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. So, what's Moses thinking here? Why would he be concerned about this? What's in his head?
John,
Yep.
one of the reasons is that he's going back to Egypt. Egypt has a God for everything. And so it's conceivable that the children of Israel, even, and they're being oppressed there and stuff, are aware of all the different gods and the idolatry that goes on there. So when you say the God, they want to know, okay, which one?
I think that's a bit of it, Tony. But I think this is, I believe this speaks more to Moses than it does to the people. Because I feel like here he's really, let's take a step back, right? So God tells you, right, I've got this plan, and I want you to go save the people. His first question was, well, I might not be the right person, right? I'm not anything in this web. The second one here is a little bit different, right? Because even if we put that piece aside, now we're talking about who within the Israelites would be the right person, right? And it should, I think what Moses is trying to deflect here is it should be somebody who's got some authority on the topic, right? Why me, an outsider who's been hanging out with the Midianites for a while, who never grew up with you? Why me? Why not one of the leaders of the Israelites? Why not one of them, right? They're the ones that the Israelites are already listening to. I don't have any sway over these people, right?
We get a sense of they could have called any god
Yep.
of their choice, but whatever was happening to them caused them to reach out. And then fast forward, Moses is back in the picture. He's scared.
Yeah.
He's frightened. If he goes back to the people that already had rejected him by saying, we saw what you did, and he fled. Now 40 years passes, and you'd think by now that he would have had a good relationship with God, but obviously in that 40-year period, God has only spoken once to him.
Yeah, and we know that Jethro was a priest of some sort, right? And I don't, it doesn't really tell us too many details about that. But I think, there was probably a little bit while he was there with the Midianites. But yeah, we're going to continue to get to some of those other pieces. But I think the authority piece is interesting, right? And I think, again, we wind up struggling with this same kind of thing here when God's calling us. What does this look like today?
I think part of his spirit would be similar to, if at work, your boss gives you a huge project, you're in charge, you have to figure out how to get from A to Z, and you don't have a clue yet how to break it down to accomplish the task.
Mm-hmm.
And your head is on the block if you don't do it right.
Right. No, I think that's similar. What else?
I know when I was a new Christian that when I felt that God was telling me to witness to somebody else as a new Christian, I was like, how am I supposed to do
Yeah.
know? But it's whether you're gonna hear his call and answer, or if you're gonna just give excuses.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the thing that stuck out to me here is that sometimes, particularly within the church, I feel like sometimes there are things that I see that like need be done. I'm like, man, I sure wish the elders would take care of that. Right? Well, somebody going to tell somebody to take care of that, please? Right? But this is kind of, for me, this is a reminder, right, that even though we may feel like we have no authority, right, we're given charge to do God's will and do God's work. Go do it, right?
Could it also be that Moses is fearful of his background in Egypt? Because it's been 40 years, but there's still people alive that knew him and who
Oh, yeah.
tell us because
Oh, yeah.
we know you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to cruise a little bit. Oh, my goodness, this was a long set. I don't know that I'll read all of this, and the words roll off the slide because I didn't do a good job with my formatting. Then Moses answered, "But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, 'The Lord did not appear to you.' The Lord said to him, 'What is that in your hand?' He said, 'A staff.' And he said, 'Throw it on the ground.' So he threw it on the ground and became a serpent. Right? So we have the staff in here, and then we have, so the staff turns into the snake, and then turns back into the staff. And then we have the hand that's leprous and not leprous, and then we have turning water into blood. I will do these things for you. Because he's concerned that the people won't listen to him, right? It doesn't matter what I say, right? I think these two are closely coupled. I don't know why. I think we split them apart because it's kind of question, response, question, response, question, response. But I think these two are the same. They won't listen to me. I don't have authority. Well, I'm sending you, and let me show you how you're going to convince them of of my authority, right? It's really not Moses' authority, but it's God's authority that Moses is representing. How does this manifest itself today? What lesson do we learn from God's response to Moses for being worried that people won't listen to him? Yeah. Folks online, could you hear Don? I'll recap. And when Kevin gets back from gallivanting around the globe, I think we're going to put mics in the back. Don was relating that he thinks, that today, and I agree, Don, today the struggle that we have is related to, being afraid to tell people about our journey with Christ and what that means to us. And that, I think, being afraid that they won't listen to us, right? And I think the point is it doesn't matter if they listen, right? They're going, and I think we'll see this, maybe not in this, did it come in this verse? It'll come in one of the next verses. Yeah, he'll mention later that ultimately it doesn't matter if they don't listen. That's not the point.
I think, too, our problem sometimes with witnessing is the fear that they're going to ridicule us.
Yeah. We're gonna. That's. Hold on. You're early.
For me, when I lived in Fresno, so you never know how someone's gonna react if you bring up Jesus, because
Right.
the world isn't a crazy place. But for me, I found out that if you let them ask you a question first, it opens the doors.
Yeah.
So I wore a sticker that said, "I'm engaged." And they said, "You're engaged in what?" I said, And then it would flow from there, but
Right.
because they're asking the question, they were more open to my response.
Yeah. So round 4, which I think speaks to they're going to ridicule me, and that's not exactly the scheme. And again, we're gonna kind of breeze through this. But Moses said to the Lord, "Oh my Lord, I'm not eloquent. They're all gonna laugh at me." Right? In the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue. And the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? What makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be your mouth and teach you what you shall speak." And that wasn't enough. "Oh, my Lord, please send someone else. Get me out of here." Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. Ooh. And he said, "Is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you. And when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. He will speak to him, put the words in his mouth. And I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do." All right? So, I think this plays a little bit to that too, right? Moses is very concerned about his self-image here. Right? Right? God gave him a study buddy. He gave him someone to help. Absolutely. Now, it cost him something, right? God's anger kindled. Woo. Where does it say that? I can't find it. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. Yee. Yikes. What else? We don't get Aaron's side, right? I think maybe the Levites, they kind of, their aptitude for saying no was probably a little smaller.
This was all a new idea, too. They had never known of anyone that had ever spoken directly with God.
Sure.
That God had spoken directly to them.
Sure, they had been in Egypt for a long time at this point, right? Generations, right?
As far as we know, no one else noticed that Moses was slow of speech and was tongue-tied.
Well, nobody else tells us. But God didn't also come back and say, "No, you aren't." Right? I think God's response here is a little instructive, right? That it didn't matter that Moses was slow of speech or had an issue, if he had an issue at all, right? I think the point was it doesn't matter what your hiccup is.
Obviously, it's temporary.
John, how many times have we been speaking God's truth to someone that they turn around and say, "Wow, that is exactly what I needed to hear." And sometimes we don't even know what we said, but that was exactly what they needed to hear.
Absolutely.
And it just comes out of our mouth, but it's actually God's words, right?
Yep. All right. How are we doing time-wise? When do we actually end class?
When the bell goes.
Oh, golly. All right. Well, we're going to cruise a little bit. We're going to skip through this. So, great. Moses seems to relent, right? Okay. He goes and gathers his family. He gets blessings from Jethro to go and do this, right? And then God reaches out and provides some additional direction, right? We're not going to go through all of those pieces, right? So he talks about Pharaoh's going to refuse, and he says, eventually I'm going to have to take the firstborn, all these sorts of things. Great, already. Great. So what's next? Off to Egypt, right? What's next? What would we think would be next? Last verse, God's anger kindled against Moses, and then we go get permission, gather, right? Time passes. We get instructions from God. and now we're on our way. And to me, these are a couple of very interesting verses that I think will go all the way back to where we were talking earlier. It's strange because we get this 3-verse departure. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him, Moses, and sought to put him to death. Okay? God has invested a lot in Moses, and he has overlooked a whole lot of things that we just talked about. But now, on the way back to Egypt, he meets him, and sought to put him to death. What's going on here? What's going on here? I don't think him going toe-to-toe with God for 4, 5, 6 rounds of verbal abuse was it. Right? So what's going on? We don't get a lot of yeah, go ahead, Laura. Yeah. His wife winds up saving him, right? Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me," so he let him alone. So it was then that she said, "a bridegroom of blood," because of the circumcision. This is the only clue we got, right? So I think the reasonable conclusions to draw, right? I guess rather than go, what do you think the conclusions are that we draw from this? What do you guys think? You think Moses is traveling, but he's not completely committed? Yeah, I think so. I think so. Absolutely.
I think not only is he slow in talking, he is slow in walking.
Think he's slow in walking?
He's dragging his feet.
That may be. I mean, I think those things are possible, but the solution here doesn't match, right? It feels like, Moses had committed, right? But he didn't do the things that he knew God commanded of his family. Right? His son wasn't circumcised. How do we know that Moses was an Israelite? Right? There was a sign. Right? Moses must have known that he was an Israelite regardless of what he knew from being put in the basket or not. Right? So, I think when we get down to it, I would imagine that he and God had another conversation, right? This isn't written here. We don't have evidence, so this is speculation, right? But I'm pretty certain that God said, hey, you better get things right. And I would imagine, based on his past performance, Moses said, nah, don't need to. That's all in my head, right? That's not written in there, but it seems to flow. And his wife surely saved his life by taking care of what God asked him. This putting the foreskin at his feet, Moses, at that point, the thinking is that he was probably waylaid and on his deathbed. And, so he's out, and Zipporah is now taking care of business, if you will. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. All right. So, what do we want to do here? So little time, so much to cover. All right. So then we're going to jump back to the outline. We're through kind of getting Moses prepped to go. Now we have first encounter with the Pharaoh, and it's going to be a failure. God already said that. Effectively, right, Aaron listens to the Lord, meets Moses. They gather the elders of Israel, share what they said. The people of Israel believe him. I think Moses is like, okay, well, going well, right? And then into chapter 5. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go." And then they said, "The God of Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or the sword." But the king of Egypt said to them, "Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens." And Pharaoh said, "Behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens." The same day, why did I have that in there twice? I shouldn't have. Did I put that in there twice? Whoops. The same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, "You shall no longer give people straw to make bricks as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the number of bricks that they made in the past you shall impose on them. Don't reduce it. And make them cry, 'Let us go and offer sacrifice to our God. Let heavier work be laid on the men, that they may labor at it, and pay no regard to lying words.'" All right? So tell me about the requests. Right? You know what? We're going to cruise through this because I want to get to the last part. And if I do this, it'll take too long. It seemed a reasonable request. Give us 3 days, right? Allow us to show deference, right? It was a God-centered request. And Pharaoh's response was a couple things, right? One, he accuses the Israelites of being lazy. "Oh, you have grown many. You must be idle. You're asking for more time off because you're already twiddling your thumbs. And therefore went about increasing the difficulty of the work, right? And expresses the intent that his desire is to break the will of the people.
But if they go out into the wilderness for a long weekend, they're not coming back.
I'm sure that's probably in his mind, right? But that's, the request was a 3-day trip. Let's see. So, what did Moses say? "Oh, I remember. The Lord told me that would happen." No. "Oh, Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you will have not delivered your people at all." Right? "I told you so. I told you it wouldn't work." We missed the part. I think I skipped the verse where it says the people of Israel were really upset at Moses too. The first bell was late. I didn't get my 10 minutes. All right. Bummer. It's a 5-minute bell? That's not fair. All right, so we're going to blast through the slides, and I want you to kind of read through them real quick. We're going to talk just kind of summary lessons. That's the end of the material that we needed to cover. So lessons we need to take. Dealing with God requires faith, not reason, right? It's not just teaching Pharaoh. We're teaching important lessons to Moses, right? Moses' response here demonstrates he didn't really believe any of this stuff would happen anyway, right? He was already set for failure. He didn't have enough faith. So when you're struggling, start with your faith. Maybe not necessarily the plan that got you where you were at. Important to plan, but don't forget your faith. Never doubt God's word. Okay? Moses was doubting. All right. How long did it take Moses to learn that God could do the impossible? He hasn't learned it yet. How long does it take him? About 40 years. Right? It was a work in progress. It took Moses a long time to figure out he could do that. If God sends, he provides, right? And it's not going to be easy. He was well equipped. Moses had everything he needed. He had God at his back, and it still didn't work, right? At least the first try. Things got worse The Israelites and the Egyptians all turned their back on Moses, but it'll be worth it. Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And you know the way to where I am going. He makes big promises and he delivers. Thank you. Next week, more stuff, lower pace. Thank you.